what do you think of that song, Weird Fishes? Michael, where does that song rank for you, like in this album? Because I want to hear a little bit. I'm. This is a great opportunity for me to. I want to hear. I want to hear from you too.
I mean, it's up there. I mean, I think it's. I feel like. I mean, to me, it sounds kind of like a trademark Radiohead song in some ways. I mean, it's sort of, it's sweeping yet like forward moving. It's lyrical yet at times dissonant.
Yep.
Like, I mean, I think that often I find their music to be a music of beautiful dissonance. That sometimes, if we were going to get all music theory about it, I feel like it certainly does resolve into like nice harmonics or whatever. I'm probably still using the wrong terms there, whatever.
Yeah, we need to get some music theorists on here, like some actual they can school us.
Having a music theorist talk about Radiohead would be, actually, that would be kind of fascinating to me, because I feel like, because I always feel like they're playing with weird time signatures, and I feel like sometimes I feel like they're writing songs in keys that haven't been created by human beings. I don't know. It's just sort of it's I mean, to me, it seems like a good choice for the standout track on the album.
It is trademark. I totally agree with that. And I think also there's a funny, I think one of the funny chapters in the Radiohead history is sort of like how they existed during the Britpop wars, you know, between Blur and Oasis and all that, and Stone Roses and, you know, all those bands. And you know, you can go back and read about how they were all competing for record sales and airtime and all that kind of stuff at the time. But it's so funny to hear the Gallaghers from Oasis talk shit about Radiohead, because they clearly just are not into Radiohead at all. And I remember reading something from one of the, I think it was Noel Gallagher, who he's sort of the worst one, isn't he?
Well,
is Noel the more annoying one?
No, Liam's the one who gets more drunk and does too many drugs, and Noah just did, like, or Noel, not Noah. Noel did, you know, some, but like he was. I always find that like the Noel quotes are more cutting, whereas the Liam quotes are just sort of like
ridiculous.
Yeah, essentially.
Right. Well, they're funny. They're funny because Noel was talking about going and seeing their set at Coachella at some point, and he goes, and I walked up and it was just a bunch of beeps and boops and these computer sounds, and it was, he goes, that's not party music. I want to listen to party music, and that tells you everything about Oasis that you need to know, in my opinion. But which I kind of like Oasis, but it's clear that they're trying to create party music, like music that you're specifically supposed to enjoy yourself to. Whereas I feel like, I mean, I hope that the dudes in Radiohead were just sort of like, okay, well, we don't care if you don't like it. Because
we're going to keep beeping and booping.
Yeah. Keep beeping and booping all the live long day. Because it's beautiful music, and it's good rock music sometimes, but other times it doesn't have a genre like that. And I think that is a beautiful aspect of it.
What do you think is the appeal? I mean, I guess now I'm talking more about just the band overall, not just in Rainbows, but you can certainly reference in Rainbows for this, because you know, there are plenty of other people out there who think that it is a bunch of beeps and boops, who find the music to be, I don't know if condescending is the right word, but who find it to be just out of reach and not worth listening to. So I guess why should we listen to Radiohead? And keeping in mind, of course, you don't have to make this case to me. You're just making it to the listeners, because I'm already on board. But
but in your position is, you know, we haven't given any points yet. We haven't really.
We have not. Yeah, you're right.
And we can take a moment here in a second to kind of assess where we're at, you feel, with my case. But to answer your question, I think that makes sense. I think that they're not the warmest band on earth, you know, like they're not the warmest presence as a band, which is neither good nor bad, in my opinion. You know, they're just trying to share, and they're doing it in a way that connects with me, just me. I can't guarantee that for anyone else. And I think that they, it's just honest. is what it feels like to me. And if it's condescending, I think a lot of people feel condescended to by them, and I think that it doesn't seem like that's the intention. It seems like maybe they're just not making people feel welcome. They're not going out of their way to make people feel welcome to their music. Like they're saying, this is it, and come on in if you want. Which I think is good. And there's a good side to that, and there's a bad side to that. I'm thinking about like Harry Styles now, and how, you know, he's the environment he seems to create at shows seems, and maybe this is a lot of to do with the sort of like genre of music that he's playing and all that, but he seems to really want to make a welcoming environment at his shows, and he really wants to make people feel like they can participate and feel supported and cared for. And I really dig that. And say what you will about him, I think that's you know, love or hate his music, basically, which I think it's I think he's got some good stuff. I think that there's something to be said for that, but Radiohead doesn't really do that.
No, it's not. Yeah, they're not. It's not. Although, I mean, I will say we talked about this album being their sexiest album. I mean, like House of Cards, the song House of Cards feels like the one song. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of it as a song, but it feels like it does feel like it's the sexy Radiohead song, right?
Yeah, it is. That one is, and the lines of you know, I don't want to be your friend. I just want to be your lover. I mean, it's right there. It's right there for you, like knowing what the stakes are, if you will.
Again, they're honest. There's like this. Yeah. We're upfront.
And you know what other song is pretty hot song is Nude, obviously. But no, not even that. It's just there's a real drive to it. There's like a groovy drive to it. And fun fact. My friend, I may have mentioned a guest of the pod, a soon-to-be guest of the pod, my friend Peter, who I went to high school with. It's a long story, and ask me about it sometimes if you want, about Incrediball, which those of you listeners out there who know what Incrediball is know that I hold it very near and dear to my heart. This protest dance that we held in high school, and Peter was the DJ, and when we were coming up with the track list, and we were working on the playlist together for the dance, and my friend Colin goes, "Well, we need a slow dance, don't we?" And I think Peter suggested Nude from this album as the slow dance, whose key line is, "You'll go to hell for what your dirty mind is thinking."
Well, you know, it's a good dance music.
It's good dance, and it's a good slow dance song too. So
the first time I saw Radiohead, there was someone had a poster that said, "I lost my virginity to tree fingers." So, you know, they definitely there's some sex appeal to their music.
That's
I guess.
Good, yeah.
Okay, we got to give you some points here because I've been doing a bad job of scoring this.
That's okay.
So I think you have to give yourself 5 jigsaws falling into place because you're doing an excellent job of making sense of a band that defies explanation.
Nice.
And then I think
the first single from this album, Jigsaw Falling into Place.
It's true. And then I think you got to give yourself what something to represent the honesty and directness with which you're speaking about the band. What could that be?
I'm finding scoring to be fun in the work we've done so far. So why don't we do like three sad boy hoodies for
there you go. Or and give yourself two googly minotaurs, because that was one of the artwork from the Kid A Amnesiac days.
There we go. Wait, giggly minotaurs is what
googly minotaurs.
Googly.
Or if we're British, I think we would say minotaur, but
minotaur.
You know. Listeners, just so you know, Tyler is going to be in charge of scoring for the rest of the season, so I'm sure you probably have no idea what the hell is going on right now. It's going to be okay. Just
everything's made up, and the points don't matter, but they do.
Nothing is real.
Everything is real.
Everything
Exactly.
is a composite of everything else. Nothing's original. We're all Madonna. Anyway.
You know what I wanted to bring up real quick was another thing that listeners should check out on YouTube about this, and I think adds to, I was talking about all the stuff that was happening around it with the artwork being released and the the little snippets of blog posts that were on there. I don't know, maybe we didn't mention that, but Jonny was keeping a blog on their or Jonny and Thom were keeping blogs on their website when this album was being recorded, which is just it was a cool thing, like a participant.
Back when blogging was cool.
Right. Get your peek behind the curtain, .blogspot.com. And so there's a great thing. They did like a short film-ish kind of thing called Scotch Mist. And it was basically these little film bits that tied together live performances of the songs, including some B-sides. And it's just really eerie and totally gives you a sense of the sort of universe that their music exists in. And I think if you are new to Radiohead, it's a great entry point into their music because you get the visual element as well, getting an idea of who they are physically, who they are in their presence.
Yeah, when you listen to one of their albums, you always sort of wonder, how are they going to play this live?
Right.
I feel like is often a big question. But there's only one song I think that I've heard them play live that I thought, I don't know if you figured out how to make that live yet. But they
Which
played
one was that?
Pyramid Song.
Yeah, I've seen them perform that one.
Which
I don't know. I liked it.
I like. I mean, I think I heard them play it when the song was still relatively new, so it was kind of. It felt like some of the kinks had been worked out or something. I don't know. I mean, once Johnny Greenwood started playing with strings, I mean, I feel like it just sort of kicked open the world of music that they were working in. And I think trying to replicate that live isn't always going to work if you don't have a full orchestra with you. Although another performance that you all should check out is when Radiohead played 15 Step at the Grammys, and they had, I think they had the USC marching band. It was just Thom and Jonny and the entire USC marching band playing. And it's amazing. Like it's
breathtaking. Yeah.
And all I can think of whenever I watch that is how, like, was the entire marching, there were at least like 4 people in that marching band who were Radiohead geeks who were just peeing their pants the entire time they were playing that, because they're like, oh my god, I'm on the Grammys and I'm playing for Radiohead right now. Like, I mean, they had to be losing their minds.
I would have been, and I was in marching band. I wasn't in the drum line, but I was in marching band. So when you see something like that, you think, oh, in the multiverse, me a couple universes over is totally enjoying doing that.
So I'm curious to know, I think it's the time where we want to start focusing a little bit more on what makes this album perfect. So I think the first question that you should probably tackle for our dear listeners is what were your standards? What are your standards for a perfect album?
Yeah. I've obviously been thinking a lot about this. And I think the key at first is completeness. I think there is I have this idea rolling around in my head of what makes a piece of art, what makes something that someone created complete, right? And I think it's a nebulous concept that doesn't necessarily need to have a definition, and we might be better served by not giving it too hard a definition. But I think this album, it doesn't always have to hit right away. I think a perfect album, in my opinion, does not have to be love at first sight.
I would agree with that,
because I think this one took me a little time to grow into it. There was a seed of something that was planted right away, but the love developed later on. And then once you really absorbed it, then I think with a perfect album, you should sense a completeness to it. Like, it didn't need more and it didn't need less. Everything that was there was supposed to be there.
I don't want to sometimes I feel like when you apply too many words to something, the whole concept goes out the window. But do you
Mm-hmm.
mean like, is it sort of like a feeling of being sated, or is it a feeling of just like the story is complete, or you just don't have any questions? You feel like you can picture the world that they've created. Like what
Mm-hmm.
level of completeness are you talking about?
I think it is probably a few of those. It's probably all of the above in some way. There is a feeling of sated for sure. Like you're, it scratches an itch that you didn't necessarily know you had. Um, that seems to be a prerequisite for me. Like if it provides the answer to a question that maybe I couldn't articulate before I had the answer, like Jeopardy,
Mhm.
um, then that's a good sign that it's pretty close to perfect. And this album did that, like there was afterwards, I understood the question that was being asked
Hmm.
by the piece.
You understood the assignment.
I suppose I did. I suppose I did. But that's the feeling of completeness as well is like it's I don't know, and maybe I like your take on this too. Like, does it have to be more than the sum of its parts? Because I think that in my mind, it's not like every song on In Rainbows put together creates something that's necessarily more than just its constituent parts.
Mhm.
I think its constituent parts, to put too fine a point on it, it's a jigsaw falling into place because it represents exactly what it should be.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, because I think it comes down to, and again, I feel like this is why I'm going to be so fascinated to hear everybody else's takes on their albums, because
Mm-hmm.
for some people, I feel like a perfect album is going to be like, I love cookies, for example. Like, so for me, a
The
perfect
Cookie
album might,
Monster.
one might say I am, but I think maybe for me a perfect album is one that is like nothing but cookies, whereas for other people
Mm.
a perfect
Mm-hmm.
album is
I
a
like that.
complete meal. You know what I mean? Like, because I mean there are some albums out there that are just like,
That's
anger,
good.
anger, anger. And there are some albums that are just total peace
Mm-hmm.
and serenity. But then there are other albums where a complete story is told, where you have high points and low points.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I guess for you, is this album all cookies, or is it a complete meal, or is it,
Yeah. That's a really good way of putting it, I think. And I think it's because this leads me to a follow-up question for you in a second, but I think that for me it's definitely nourishing. There's a lot of food imagery we got going on here. It's definitely nourishing, but I think sometimes it's a cookie and sometimes it's a very satisfying meal
Mhm.
because and I'd be interested to see if you do this too. I tend to use music medicinally a lot. Like
Mm.
I engage emotionally with particular albums when I'm feeling in a particular headspace. And so this album is definitely one that I kind of use medicinally.
Mhm.
Um, of course, the thing that is like close to your heart and is your favorite of something, you're going to always um, use it for something. But I don't. Maybe not everyone listens to music that way. And for me, a perfect album is always going to have some kind of use for you, some kind of role to play in your life.
Hmm. So then this is, if you were saying to our dear listeners, like,
Hmm.
In Rainbows is the perfect album for blank, how would you finish that sentence?
In yeah, In Rainbows is the perfect album for knowing that you're not the only freak on Earth. you know like
Hmm.
everybody like everybody's a freak. It's kind of like everybody's freaky is
Hmm.
one of the things messages I get from this band and in this album in particular.
Hmm.
And the you're not alone element of it, I think, is the to me, In Rainbows is the perfect album to help you not feel alone. um because there's maybe one of the messages that I get from this is like, um hey, I'm feeling that way too, like, and there's an emotional honesty there that is connectable for me.
Hmm.
And so I use it in that way, you know, like when I'm feeling not at home in my body or in my you know, in my situation. I find myself in situations where I feel like dissonant or out of place or ajar, then this album for me makes me feel like I'm not, you know, I'm not alone in that.
That's well said. I think you need to give yourself some points, but I don't know what those points are.
Why don't we give? Well, how about two sleeves of 16 cookies each?
Give yourself that, and then also throw in 7 paranoid androids.
Oh, cool.
Because you know that's the paranoia and.
How many?
I guess 7. 7's a good number.
7 is a good number.
Yeah.
7 paranoid androids.
Well, I feel like paranoia and loneliness are both sort of things that run through a lot of Radiohead music.
Yeah.
And I mean, I like what you said about, you know, it's like sort of feeling like it's okay to be alone because, you know, referencing what Mr. Gallagher of Oasis said earlier, you know, no one's singing along at a party to a Radiohead song. Everyone's not being like, oh my God, everyone, Karma Police is on. Like, let's all sing together. Like, no one's doing that. Like, but you might be driving in a car with like 2 close friends and that comes on and you blare it and the 3 of you sing it at the top of your lungs. But it's not like, you know, we're not singing Party in the USA. It's not, not that. And I feel like, I mean, maybe there are people who love Radiohead who were really cool in school, but I'm willing to bet that where those 2 circles in the Venn diagram overlap, it is but a sliver,
barely perceptible to the naked eye.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah, I can't say I disagree with you there, man. I mean, there's and I think also this is a good time to acknowledge the kind of stereotype around Radiohead fans. There's like people who self-identify as Radiohead fans, as I hate to say it, but I do. It's just, there's like the sad boy thing, you know, like and I think a lot of people might say they're whiny, you know, like there's a kind of whininess to this, to their music, and they're probably not wrong, you know, like that's just a phenomenon. And I think, as long as we can be honest about it, as long as we can be honest about how sort of silly it is.
Yeah, but they're not whiny in like an emo way. I mean, they're not, you know, like putting on extra mascara and crying in their bedroom about like how you know, how their parents don't understand them. But
I don't think we get emo without Radiohead. Or would you connect emo more to grunge?
I mean, I guess sort of if you put grunge and Radiohead together, it would equal emo, maybe. But no, because I don't even think that, because, again, you'd have to define what era of Radiohead you're talking about, right? Because early Radiohead is totally, you know, like, oh, my girlfriend doesn't like me anymore. And that's, you know, how we get the song Creep. But later Radiohead songs are talking about, man, isn't capitalism awful? Or like, you know, or like, hey, George W. Bush. Like those are sort of like the overall, some of the messages running through the later years, which I guess you can get kind of emo about too. But it's, I don't know. What makes you say that they lead to emo?
Well, I think there's something about the, I don't know. I think there's an interesting relationship with masculinity that I think this band has, where, you know, I think maybe a large perception of the music and maybe their presence is that they're kind of soft, you know, that they're not tough, not a tough guy band. Like maybe Oasis are kind of a tough guy, you know, they're the tough guy version of Radiohead.
That's sad if that's the case, but continue.
Yeah, right. Well, at least they style themselves that, you know, and I think that the willingness to just kind of be there in that space of, you know, questioning, not necessarily conforming to that idea of masculinity, is a cool thing. And even if it's happening in kind of just a soft way, not in like full revolt against gender roles and all that kind of, and like the things that gender means, but just a small form of resistance to that, smaller, kind of quieter form of that. This isn't a fully formed idea, by the way. I've never articulated this take before. I think there's something in it, but it might just be BS.
I mean, I'd have to think more about, because I mean, honestly, I didn't ever fully embrace emo. I just sort of dramaturgically came to it because of some projects that I worked on in grad school.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess emo always strikes me as being more about conveying a clear emotional message underneath relatively conventional musicality. I mean, I don't mean conventional to be, I don't mean either of those things to be a diss on the genre, but I would never refer to Radiohead as musically simplistic.
No.
I mean,
maybe I see what you're saying though, because there's I think there's another element in emo that is, so this concept of angst, if you will, and how every, throughout, angst is something that drives all expression, right? That's just like the, the frustration with the world. And I think Radiohead had a very particular kind of angst in the 90s that expressed itself in the vernacular of their time, the musical vernacular of their times. And I think emo is what happens when you have that same sort of emotional questioning happening under the surface and kind of like roiling and boiling there. But then you add another kind of angst for that generation of the early aughts. There's sort of there is a bit of a generation. Our angsts are different in that decade. There's a shift that happens there, I think.
Well, and I mean, I'm sure someone's written a thesis on like music post 9/11, if that has anything to do with it. But
political consciousness, that was a big moment of political consciousness for a lot of people at that time. And so how could that not affect the way that you are expressing yourself, even if you're just sort of like, I'm just thinking like, is Blink-182 emo? Is that?
No, I wouldn't call them emo. Okay. I'd call them power pop.
Power pop. Okay. We have friends who would have strong opinions on this.
We'll have them on next season.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess because I kind of lump them in. We're getting sidetracked here, but
yeah. But this makes me think about. I just sort of was formulating this idea in my head as you were talking. I'm sort of, one of the things that I've been sort of grappling with, maybe that's not the right verb, that feels too strong, but I'm going to go with it, is a lot of the bands that I started listening to in the early 90s are like aging now. I've been listening to them for close to 30 years now, and some bands, I will not name them, but there is one in particular that I was a huge fan of that I have not liked any of their recent albums, and when I listen to the music, that just doesn't appeal to me anymore. But for some reason, Radiohead still does. I don't know if it's because they're sort of naturally evolving with their age. Because, I mean, I feel like I'm going to put out a big theory here. Maybe this will be like the hallmark of something later on. But I wonder if musical artists, if they are fortunate enough to stick around for a while, their subject matter turns from like very internal, like my girlfriend won't date me anymore, she thinks I'm a creep, to external in a very like political way, where they're just sort of, maybe it's just Radiohead's journey, but like where they're wrestling with society and things about it that they do and don't like, and then finally, as they get older, like we all do, they are contemplating their own mortality. And thus the music sort of follows that journey. So there's not going to be that same sort of angst in their later years, because they're wrestling with, they just don't have the same sort of energy, and they're wrestling with much bigger concepts, and concepts that are like right in their face, that are like, they're all in their 50s now, right? Maybe late 40s for some of them.
I think at least two of them have to be in their 50s now, if not solidly into their 50s.
I think Tom's got to be 50. How do I not know this? I feel like I'm a bad fan.
Might even be mid 50s there.
I'm looking it up.
I wanted to what you're saying about that. I think there's got to be an arc. There's got to be like a sort of like archetypal arc there. So I think there's definitely something in that theory. And like sort of the ways that different artists come to those different stages, I think is probably the key fascination, right? Like in what order do those things happen in a different order maybe, or like are you pretty much always going to see that sort of journey? But you definitely see, I think one of my favorite lines, and it's not from In Rainbows, but it's from an earlier album, and it's I want to live, breathe, I want to be part of the human race. And that to me might be the thesis of Radiohead, is I want to live, I want to breathe, I want to be a part of the human race.
It's crazy that you mentioned that line, because I was going to bring this up later. The first time I saw Radiohead, with 3 of my absolute best friends from college, we saw them and I think it was August of 2001 at Liberty State Park, which is a whole nightmare in terms of how we got there and whatnot. But I mean, we got there really early because we were young. So we were willing to stand for multiple hours until the band started so we could get close to them. And we were pretty close to the stage, but they played 4 encores. Wow. And the 4th encore was a surprise because we thought they were finishing after their 3rd encore. People started walking and leaving.
Yeah.
And then they all came back on stage, and everyone ran back towards the stage, and they just played one song for their 4th encore, and they played The Bends. And so if you can imagine at the end of the whole evening, like all these people who have been experiencing the greatest concert of their lives, everyone singing. I'm going to contradict what I said earlier about singing along to Radiohead, but imagine a huge crowd of people all singing along to that line, I want to live, breathe, I want to be part of the human race, like at the top of their lungs at the end of a just cathartic experience. I mean, that to me, that's my memory of Radiohead is that.
What more could you want? What more could you want from a communal musical experience, in my opinion? Like okay. So to bring it back to why this album in particular is perfect, is because in that same way that like that experience was rife with surprise for you, like the whole thing, and this album, I think a perfect album has to take you by surprise in some way. Like it has to do something unexpected. And I don't have a strong definition of what that is, but from song to song, I feel like I'm always taken by something that happens each time I listen to the album. I always notice something different. I always feel some kind of undercurrent in a different way than I did before. And it's always surprising to me. Even though I've listened to this album probably hundreds of times, it's that fresh still. And I listen to it piecemeal sometimes, or I listen to it to completion, and it's pretty short. It's a lot shorter than Hail to the Thief, which was one of their key goals. And I think there's economy, like the economy works for this album. That's another reason that it is perfect, is that there's just a real economy of content there.
Yeah, there's a maturity about the album too, not just in terms of like the song selection, because they did have other songs. There was a second disc released,
really good second disc,
which does have some good songs on it. But when you listen to those songs and then you listen to the first album, you're like, yeah, that's right. These songs don't belong on that album. So keep them on that second disc, please. Thank you.
There's an opportunity. Like I think as a general concept, the idea of doing less, like doing only the right important things in your life, like basing your decisions on, I'm not going to concern myself with, like all the extra. I just want to focus on the sort of essentialism of being kind, and like knowing what to leave out is such a fine art in life. And I always admire the people who, whether it's in their creative work or just in their family life or in their career or whatever it might be, when they can do less but like really do the best. That's super inspiring to me.
Yeah, it's like when I grade my students' papers and I reward them for conciseness.
Yeah, we should.
Because if you can say, like, there are plenty of people who can talk about something for 10 minutes, but the person who can sum all that up in one sentence and convey the same amount of knowledge, not necessarily information, but knowledge in a single line, I feel like that's worthwhile. And there's so many, I think that's sort of, for me, that's That's how I define a lot of Radiohead lyrics, is that it's in one line they convey an image or an idea that maybe they didn't intend to be the image or idea, but I feel like you can take away a million things from just one lyric.
Here's an example. In Weird Fishes, which the listeners listened to just a bit ago, the line, everybody leaves if they get the chance, and this is my chance, is a line that it's one of the lines I think about the most from this album. But I think it's because the turn from everybody leaves if they get the chance, and you think this line is going one way, and this is my chance happens, and you think, wow, this is I at least for me, I'm like, I didn't see that coming. I didn't see that sort of admission coming in this kind of song. And it's vocally very stretched out, and they're held notes. He's holding on to these notes for a while. And so you're kind of hanging on every moment that he's singing each note. And by the time it gets to, and this is my chance, there is a resolution to that, that I think lyrically it's another line that is very just emblematic of who they are as a band. Mm-hmm.
Well, we could talk about Radiohead forever, and we probably will over the course of this podcast on other episodes. But
I got one more question for you.
Oh yeah,
do you have any skips? Do you skip any songs on this album?
On this album, I used to skip All I Need.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes I would skip Videotape if I just didn't really feel like listening to it, because I feel like it has it's not dour, but it ends on kind of a there's some labor involved with that song, I feel like. But I
can see that.
But like not all the time. Like I wouldn't skip them because I'd be like, oh god, I can't listen to this. Just sort of like there are some songs on this that I feel like I'm not always in the mood to listen to. That's it.
Yeah.
What about you?
I think there are a couple songs on here that I wouldn't go out of my way to listen to on their own.
Okay.
But in the context of a full listen through, no skips, for sure.
Okay.
I listen to every song, and the ones that I would maybe not seek out, that I maybe wouldn't seek out, may only be Videotape and Faustarp. But those are still both still kick-ass songs.
Well, Faustarp feels like a transition song anyway, but
yeah, I love that stuff.
Anyway, sorry. That's okay. No, hey, I promise we will talk about Radiohead again, dear listeners. But we should evaluate our case here. Can you go over the scorecard, Tyler? See how we did on this one.
Yes, we can. Okay, so here's the breakdown of the points that were scored. Michael got 2 MTV bargain bins for his valiant effort.
Did you really have to make that face when you said it, though? Like, I mean, I know
it's an auditory medium, so you're the only one that gets to enjoy that.
All right, continue with the scorecard, please.
So you got 2 of those bargain bins. Then here are the points that I scored for my the case that I made for the perfection of In Rainbows. I very sweetly got 7 paranoid androids, and I'll name all of them Marvin. I got 2 sleeves of cookies. I'm thinking there may be some peppermint JoJo's because I'm still feeling a little festive.
Ooh, or Thin Mints.
Or Thin Mints would be good too.
Yeah.
I got 2 googly minotaurs.
Thank you for the British pronunciation.
Minotaurs. And then I got 3 sad boy hoodies. You can just throw that hood up and shove your hands into the pocket, and then that's the Radiohead uniform. And then I got the first points that I got on the board were 5 jigsaws falling into place. So, I mean, normally this would be the part where you and I would deliberate to see if the person had made a quality case. Mm-hmm. I guess you're going to have to decide for me today. Did I do it?
Well, I mean, is there any other case you want to make to me or to the listeners, or do you feel you've made your entire case?
I'll do a closing argument if it pleases the court.
It does.
I think it's fun to listen to Radiohead because they're sort of a meme of themselves, if you will. Like they've been around so long, and people have such strong opinions about them that I think once you it's fun to know all that, and then when you come down to it, just really sitting down and absorbing one of these albums is a pretty beautiful experience, because you can really feel that this was packaged in this particular way for you, the audience, with such a generous energy from this band, in my opinion. And I think In Rainbows is such a distillation of so many of the good qualities that this band has, in terms of the vulnerability, their ability to rock hard, their ability to do things, to tell a story, to ask you a question, and to express themselves. And I think if you want to know Radiohead, go listen to all their albums, but maybe listen to this one first.
All right. Well, although it is not my favorite Radiohead album, but I'm sure we'll get to that in the future. Mm-hmm. I would have to say, Tyler, I think you have made a very strong case, and I do believe that In Rainbows by Radiohead, parentheses 1997, or 2007, not 2007, parentheses, is in fact a perfect album.
It so goes to 11.
It does go to 11, yes.
All the way to 11.
To use our term.
Thank you. This was special. I've been really looking forward to this. I'm really glad. I'm really glad to share, and I hope that the listeners will enjoy this album too, because that's what this is all about. This is all about us telling some stories about some things you may never have heard, and that's going to be the fun of this.
Yeah, and of course, dear listeners, we'll be curious to hear from you. If you do ever have any questions or comments, we do have an email address, which is this one goes to 11podcast@gmail.com, and it's THISONE goes to, and then the number 11 podcast@gmail.com. It's in Spotify. You'll be able to see the address on You'll see it.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to leave us with another track off the album. I have chosen one, actually. For me, I think the standout track falls right in the middle of the album. It's a little song called Reckoner, which for me, I mean, I guess if I were trying to if I had to come up with a list of 5 songs that are, like, if someone asked, what does Radiohead sound like? This would be one of the songs I would put on that list of 5.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to elaborate on what I mean by that, because I want people to listen to it first. But do you approve of my selection, Tyler?
I really do. I have a very strong sense memory of hearing this song meaningfully for the first time. And it was, and all I'll say was that it was a beautiful morning. It was a beautiful morning on the first morning. I really heard this song, and I hope you enjoy it too.
So let's give a listen to Reckoner. Oh my God, what am I even saying? Reckoner. Off In Rainbows by Radiohead, and I guess we'll see y'all next week.
Yeah, see you then. Thanks for tuning in.